Welcome back, Nightmare Success listeners. So I know you guys come here for the good stuff, and I've got something good, really inspiring story. And we talk about on this show what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt? How do you survive? Well, I think maybe one of the biggest nightmares anybody could have is that you get pulled aside one day and somebody says that you are accused of a murder that you didn't do. And that becomes a spiral that you get convicted of a murder that you didn't do. And you get life without parole. Well, and you get 24 years of fighting every day to prove your innocence, to finally get free. I've got Darryl Burton here, and he is that guy. He is the guy that lived that life and lived that nightmare, and he is here to share his story. Darryl Burton, so happy to have you here, making the time. We actually set up earlier today, and Darryl was getting his car serviced, and the guy needed the office, so we said, wait, we got to redo this. So here we are. We're set up. Darryl, welcome.
Well, thank you, Brett. I'm happy to be with you.
So Darryl, this is one of those things that happens in our justice system that everybody, when they hear about it, it's like, oh man, how in the world could that happen? How in the world could something like that happen? And it happened to you, and you lived it. Let's walk back a little bit. Take us back to Darryl Burton growing up in St. Louis as a kid. What was life like with Darryl Burton as a kid?
Well, I mean, as a kid, I grew up in the inner city of St. Louis, a little bit south of Ferguson, Missouri. Big family, large family. Had nine of us, nine siblings. It was nine of us all together. And then my grandmother had nine children, so I had a lot of cousins, big family. And most of the families in the community were large families. But as a kid, you're in the sports, you're playing, with other kids and, and with your cousins, you're doing. And back then in the day when I grew up, tumbling was the thing, gymnastics. And if you couldn't tumble, you wasn't cool. That was the thing. So you had to know how to flip. And
had to know how to flip.
You had to know how to flip, man. Yeah, you had to be a flipper. So if you wasn't flipping, nobody, you didn't get any kind of attention from anybody, especially the girls. The girls would,
I can't imagine being in that big a family and then having that many cousins along with it. I mean, life had to just be, well, I mean, in your household, mom, dad, is everybody living in the house? Is it?
Yeah, this was my grandmother's house, and everybody pretty much lived in my grandmother's house, except some of my aunts. Some of my aunts, they had their own, homes with their families, with their, children. But my grandmother she was the matriarch of the family, and everybody gathered at grandmama's house. Mm-hmm. Then my mom and dad, they moved and got their own house. My mom's still in that house right now today. But they both, my grandmother and my mother, and my aunts, men became single parents because, as in relationships, sometimes people get divorced, they split, and they had to still raise these kids. But as kids, we don't know. I mean, we knew we were poor, but we had fun. It was exciting times when you're a kid. You see the world in a way where that's what it says like, and going to God, and the kingdom of God is like children. It's just like being, filled with joy and happiness, and and filled with ideas that, you can do anything, and that the world is just is waiting at your every beck and call. And so that's how it was for me growing up. You see, I saw everybody, in the way that I saw myself, just genuinely good people, nice people, and just trying to make a way for themselves and take care of those who they liked and loved.
What were your high school years like?
My high school years, I didn't get a chance to finish high school. I mean, I went to high school, then I dropped out, got kicked out, got in trouble as a young person, at about 16, 17. Then I went back to high school. I was trying to go back to high school, soda in high school, and which I got in. And I talked to the academic counselor who said, you know, you're so far behind in your credits. You can make the grade because academic wise, you know, I was good in both athletics and academics. I was competitive in both. A couple of girls used to make a little bit better grade than me, and I didn't like that. I thought they were cheating. But no, I was told that she said, you know, you're going to be 21 years old if you know, go back to school and, you know, and try to get caught up. You might as well go get your GED. And I said, well, what can I do that? She said, well, the Board of Education. Go and take the GED test, and then, you know, if you get your GED, then you can just enroll in college and go to a community college. So that's what I did. It took me 4 weeks to get my GED, and I enrolled in college right before I got, you know, wrongfully convicted and sent to prison. Yeah.
Okay, so Darryl, let's walk through that, because you're in the midst of, you know, when you're that age, you know, kind of everybody's doing what they're doing. You're getting your GED, you're getting into college. How does this all happen for you? How does it transpire that you just get pulled out of your world into a nightmare?
Well, I mean, what happened is I went and saw my parole officer because like I said, I had gotten in trouble. I was about 17 and got in trouble with the law for burglary, and I did that. I admitted to that and was doing my time, did my time, and I was on parole. A few months left, and I went and saw the parole officer. And the parole officer called the police, who came and arrested me, you know, for this murder. And they said I was responsible for the murder of a gentleman named Donald Ball. And the family members of, you know, of the victim, they were the ones who suggested my name to the police and tried to say that the feud or the motive was over a girl who had been dating the victim or allegedly dating a cousin of mine, which still don't have anything to do with me, except we cousins, brothers, we're a close family. Right. So if you mess with one, you mess with them all. Yeah. But it wasn't true, and I'm glad. And the lady, she wouldn't come to court and she wouldn't lie for the prosecutors and the police. She said, no, that's not true, because she didn't date the victim, hadn't dated him in over a year, and she never dated my cousin. So, but that's where they arrested me.
If I remember right, Darryl, reading some of the, because you know, some of the stuff that you read online is right, some of it's murky. And did you get pulled into a lineup?
Yes, I got pulled into a lineup. That's right. And of course, as with all lineups, you know, the police, they tell whoever, you know, these witnesses are, they tell them who to pick. So I don't remember exactly, you know, what number I was in the lineup. I can't remember going back that far, but I was in a lineup. I was in a couple of lineups, I believe, because there was a couple of witnesses, snitch witnesses, police paid informants. And they pulled me, they picked me out of the lineup, which bound me over for trial. And so I was the suspect who eventually became the defendant in a trial for capital murder, facing the death penalty. Yeah.
So Darryl, I mean, I can't imagine, you know, because I think that living in America, that's everybody's worst nightmare, is that you get pulled into a lineup. You know, you see it on the movies, you know, these people get lined up and you got somebody that's standing behind a, you know, a glass, you know, that you can't see, they can see over, and they can't see you, and you get picked out of that, and then they pull you out of there and they tell you you're the guy. What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, at first I'm thinking, well, I mean, because I know I'm innocent, no one is going to pick me out of a lineup because they would be lying. That's just right. What I thought. And so, and I'm pretty confident and sure that when they take me out of this lineup, they're going to say, okay, well, you know, we got the wrong guy. Release me. And then I would go home. But it didn't happen like that. When they came, you know, and finished the lineup, when they came inside of the, you know, like I said, it's got this two-way mirror, and came inside this room, they told all the other guys to leave or go back to the, you know, they cell or whatever. And then they proceeded to take me in to another area to process me for the crime of capital murder, you know. And so it was unbelievable. It was basically a shock, and I was confused. but I still believed in the system. I said, man, no one goes to prison or to jail who's innocent. I didn't believe that would happen. And I thought
Well,
this is
I think that's
1984.
the,
Yeah,
yeah,
1984. I thought I was the only person in the world this has ever happened to. So that's what I was
yeah.
thinking. It's just, they're going to resolve this and they're going to figure it out.
Now, these your family, how did they find out about this? How do they find out about this?
Yeah, well, they found out about it. I mean, of course, I get a phone call. I was able to call home and make a
Yeah,
call and connect with my family and told them. And of course, my family, believed in me. They believed in my innocence because we knew the victim. He was the best friend of
right.
my older brother. We knew the guy. We always,
Mhm.
like I say, we run in the same neighborhood. And that's why they said it was no motive. They never did say what the motive was. In fact, they said, we don't have a motive and we don't need one. But I got two people saying that, Darryl did it. And that's what, sent me to prison. But my family and some of his family members thought that I was, innocent also for a very long time. But then you got some of his family also feel like I'm responsible. And that's not going to change even to this day.
Well, and I think one of the things that's interesting when you look back on the details of this story, uh, the person who was murdered was shot the year before, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it didn't kill him, obviously, but they never investigated that person as a potential um, a person that could have done this crime, and which is, you read through this and you think, how in the world could that happen? But a lot of times what happens is that law enforcement can set up a narrative, drive that narrative. I mean, you can see it, you watch Dateline and all these different things where people, they get locked in on something, a subject, and then they put blinders on, and all, like, the most obvious things they don't even look at, because they've got this narrative of, this is the way that we're going to go after this. This is the way we're going to do it. What were you thinking as far as as I was reading there, you had a public defender. How did that all come about for you? Did you just meet this person and they came in and they said, hey, I'm defending you and here's what we're going to do? Or how did that all work for you?
And when I had several public defenders prior to the one that I ended up going to trial with, they just kept switching lawyers. And I didn't know how the process was supposed to work.
Yeah.
But I eventually ended up with a public defender who I saw one time for 1 hour. That was it. And what I learned is something you just spoke about, Brad, is that this guy had shot this man a year prior. But that was one shooting. He had shot the man 3 different times, three
Wow.
times before he finally shot and killed this guy, because they was fighting over drug turf. It was 2 gangs, they was fighting over this. It was a drug war, just like the Al Capone back in the day.
Yeah.
It was a modern day drug war over drug turf, and they was, this involved these guys. They was, gangsters and pimps and drug lords. That's what they did. And the judge, the prosecutor, and my lawyer knew about that, and they agreed not to let the jury hear about that. That the man shot him 3 separate occasions, not in the same episode, 3 separate occasions, and they knew that. I didn't find this out to some years later. But I'm saying, how could you say about justice when you have this guy who's a suspect who's still out there on the streets? A couple of years later, he got killed also, by some of those rival gangs.
The bullet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I again, reading some of this stuff, were you not even in town?
I was not even in town, man. I was in another state, the state of Washington, in Tacoma, Washington. And I told the lawyer that, and I said, look, go get the airline tickets, go and talk to, my friend, my best friend. He's up there, I got an alibi. Oh, we don't need to do that. Like I said, I saw the lawyer one time, so I didn't get a chance to convince this lawyer to do anything. And the lawyer said, that's on the burden is on the state. You don't have to prove it, anything, but that's not so. You have to prove something. I mean, I'm telling you, they say the presumption of innocence stays with the defendant. No, not necessarily. When you get charged with something, you got to prove that you're innocent. You have to put up a defense. That's just the way it is. And so it sounds good in theory, that you're presumed innocent, but in reality, no, you are presumed guilty. When you come into a courtroom for a charge like that, jurors automatically get a preconception that, hey, if the prosecution arrested this person, well, they must have, you know, evidence to say that this is the one who did it. And then they parade in, out of this case with me, is out of whole cloth. It's just a pack of lies. But they parade all these people in, and the jury, what the jury is going to think? They're going to think, well, the prosecutor must have, you know, the evidence. But this is just, like I say, a pack of lies. Man, this case was built out of whole cloth of nothing but lies.
Well, and it was. I mean, looking back at what was going on, you had the person that was at the gas station where the murder happened. And that person said this was a light-skinned person that was about 5'4", 5'5". You're a dark-skinned person that's 5'10", 5'11". So that alone was something. The other people were brought in. They said they were around there. They weren't even where they could see it. And you know, those two people were also given something to say, hey, listen, say this, and we'll go lighter with you on this. That's the one thing that I think, Darryl, is important for people to know about how these things happen. The jury, as you said, they come in with the perception that this person obviously has done something bad, or they wouldn't have taken the time to go through this whole process, bring us to this point, select this jury, get this judge here, unless that person did something really bad. And what you just said, the presumption of innocence, yes, it says that. It is in the words, but the feel and the vibe is when you walk in that you're guilty, and you have to prove yourself. And, you know, that attorney was writing on the words and not knowing the world of what it really was, because if you can't defend yourself, then the jury's going to take whatever the prosecution says, and that's going to be it. You know, the one of the things I think is interesting in our justice system, the federal system, this was a state case. The federal system has a grand jury where you go in and people think, well, a grand jury means that both sides are heard. You've got the prosecution and you've got the defense. That's not how it works at all. A grand jury, you walk in and the prosecution only presents their case, and they listen to that and they decide if they're going to charge or not. That's exactly, if you flip that, what your situation was, is that she just let the prosecution present their case and there was a defense that was presented. So what is the jury going to do? The jury's going to accept what the prosecution says because that's their story. And I think from what I understand, this went on for, I think, 3 days, this case. They brought in these different witnesses and snitches and whatever that were getting off on different things. And correct me if I'm wrong, Darryl, but did the jury only deliberate for like 30, 45 minutes?
Oh, you're absolutely right, Brett. Yes, 30, 40 minutes. I mean, and that may be stretching it. They went out for about an hour. I mean, I can't remember exactly what time it was. They went out like 10 o'clock, 10, whatever it was. But they came right back at 11, so right before lunchtime, right before 12, if memory serves me correctly. And I'm thinking, well, it took 20 minutes to walk to the jury room and back, at least 20 minutes. And so
Sure.
I'm thinking, what did they deliberate? Man, they had me convicted before they left, the courtroom. They had already made up in their minds that I was, the person responsible for for his death, and I wasn't. And but I mean, it's just like in a courtroom. See, this is how this stuff is so organized and controlled. You don't just get a chance to talk. You got to answer questions. You don't get a chance to just get up there and just say, look, and I could have got up there and got passionate, just like I'm a little passionate with you now. No, the prosecutor gonna ask questions, you answer, and the judge it would control you if you just try to speak and start talking. And so, it is a controlled setting, and is controlled and slanted toward the prosecution. And the judge in this case was pro-prosecution, and the jurors can pick that up. And so, and the jury, and they pick up even my so-called public defender, which I call a public pretender, pretending to defend me. Mm-hmm. This person called me by the defendant, didn't even call me by my name, called me the defendant. The defendant, ladies and gentlemen, was calling me the same thing the prosecutor was calling me, the defendant. So, I mean,
It
it
doesn't
was all,
humanize you at all.
yeah, exactly. So it was, yeah, it was
So, so Darryl,
classic
when they
railroad,
come
classic
back in,
railroad.
when they
Go
come
ahead.
back in, they come back in, and you've know that this hasn't taken very long, and they come out and they pronounce you guilty. What is rolling through your mind at that point? What do you what's I mean, what does a person think?
At that point, I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I was angry, confused. I mean, every emotion that you could feel, you know, inside of yourself. At least for me, is what I felt. I felt, you know, rage. I felt, you know, that these people here just didn't listen to anything, and I was angry at the jurors. I was, you know,
Sure.
and I was angry at the entire process. But I'm thinking, you people didn't listen to anything. You know, it's almost like, you know, you don't care, and it's
Yeah.
basically somebody killed this guy, and this guy is good enough to, you know, pay the penalty
Just pay the
for it.
price.
You
Yeah.
know, yeah, you know. So it was like, but if I was related to them, or if it was their relative sitting in that seat, or, you know, sitting at that defense table, they would have had a whole different perspective. You know, the judge would have, if it was his nephew or son or
Yeah.
daughter, the prosecutor, the police, all those folks, you feel differently when it's your relative. But since I'm just someone, I'm insignificant to those folks. It's like, okay, he's another black guy, poor. He don't have a good defense. Well, you know, he
Yeah.
just another one off the streets, basically. You know, so they didn't care. And so when the jury came back that quick, it told me they didn't care either. They didn't care, you know, and somebody's got to pay for it. We'll satisfy the victim's family because, you know, they at least see somebody got convicted for killing their loved one.
So what are the steps that happen after that?
Well, it's a long process. You know, I argued with the judge. I just want to say this here too, also for the record, as I told the judge that he was allowing those people to frame me and that he was a part of it. And I was going to fight this case till I proved that I was innocent. Of course, he, you know, was upset when he let me speak, and he blasted me, but I didn't care. He turned as red as a Chinese flag. But if I wasn't so dark, he would have known how red I was with anger and rage. But
Mhm.
the process then, I got sent to the Missouri State Penitentiary. Time magazine described Missouri State Penitentiary as the bloodiest 47 acres in America at one
Yes.
time. And that's where I
Which
was
is
sent.
closed down now, by the way. I
It's
think they
closed.
closed it
It closed in
15 years
2004.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2004. And I was a young father. My girl had just had a child. I had just enrolled in college. This is 1984. I was going to go to college for business administration, sociology, but the daughter, she was 7 months. I saw her 3 times. Didn't see my little girl again for 25 years. And so I
Hmm.
get into this prison and come through these prison doors, and they open these big black gates, and everything went in slow motion, even though it's in real time. But it's like,
Yeah.
it was just, you had a feeling. Every man on that bus, we all stopped talking and just looked. And we knew this is going to be a different experience. It's like you've been transported from one dimension into another. And we got inside of this prison. We got these shackles, 5-point shackles, 2 on our wrists, black boxes, 1 on the waist, 2 on the ankles. And we saw this huge banner. It said, "Welcome to the Missouri State Penitentiary. Leave all your hope, family, and dreams behind." And it
Wow.
was like entering to Dante's Inferno. He who enters here will not leave alive. Basically, you're gonna die in here. No hope, no hope for you. And they meant that. And the family can't help you, and the dreams will be nightmares. And so, in the process of getting out, I can tell you a whole lot of stories about what it's like to be in that place when you're just dealing with mayhem and chaos and stabbings and killings. That's what I'm seeing all the time. In fact, the first
Well,
unit I got,
let's walk through that a little bit, Darryl, because you're
yeah,
walking into a situation where you're an innocent man being dragged into one of the worst prisons in the United States that they had to close down. What was, as you walk in and you get prisonized, which they do to you, uh, how do you walk into that world?
yeah. Well, you know, my mindset was I'm angry at the system for what a handful of people did to me. I hated everybody part of the system anywhere in the world. So I'm angry. And my mindset was, you know, they took my freedom from me. No one's going to take my manhood, because in prison, God's going to challenge you for your manhood, if you know what I mean, and your money. And so that was my mindset, you know, for before God tried to make me into his, you know, any kind of property, any kind of way, you know, you're going to have to kill me. That was just, you know, that was what you call no negotiation, no discussion. But you get in and they strip you down, tell you take all your clothes off, 30, 40 guys, and you get naked right there in front of 30, 40 men, and they spray you with some kind of Lysol or bug repellent on every part of your body that has hair, tell you to shower off, and then they assign you prison identification number. The number they assigned me was 153063. It stamped on everything that was connected to me. And I had on pants, socks, coats, shirts, underclothes, and I hated it. I mean, it's degrading, it's dehumanizing. You know, yeah, you're nothing but a number. Rarely would they call me by my whole name, Darryl Burton. I don't think I ever heard no one call me by that name.
I'll never call you by your first name.
Never the first name. Burton 153063. That's where they addressed me. And I wouldn't answer to that call over the intercom system sometime. And the guards would be upset, and they'd come and say, "Didn't you hear your number being called?" I said, "No, I heard your number being called. I'm not a number. You know, my name is Darryl Burton." And so, and they would say, "We're going to put you in the hole." I was putting me in the hole, man. I'm already in the hole. This whole prison is a hole. Like I said, when I got there, I was angry, man. I'm innocent, so I know I shouldn't have been there. So I was rebelling. I was getting what you call a lot of write-ups, and, you know, CDs, CDVs, conduct violations. I won't say a lot of them, but I got some disobeying orders because I wasn't big on taking orders. And I knew that wasn't a wise thing to do. I knew I was going to have to try to figure out ways where I could stay at least in population, where I could go to the law library, because that was my focus. I said, I got to get to the law library. I got to learn about the law, because I knew the law put me here. It's going to take the law to get me out of here. I knew that much. I just didn't know how, because I'm not a lawyer.
Well, I think the interesting and really inspiring part of this story is you were an angry man, and justly so, to be an angry man. But what I think is inspiring about your story, and for people listening to this, is that you never gave up on your innocence. You know, a lot of people can take victimhood and go ball up in a fetal position, feel sorry for themselves, and give up. And you didn't do that, Darryl. What I read is that, yes, you were an angry man, and rightly so, but you started studying the law. You started writing letters to senators, to congressmen, and the name of the group that took on the Innocence Projects, I don't have.
No, it's the Centurion Ministry.
Yes.
Yeah.
You began writing to them, and you didn't. And I think one of the times they said, "Well, we're not going to be able to get to your case for maybe 10 years or more," and you continued to write them. Consistently write them, consistently write everybody. And, you know, I think nobody knows what they would do in a situation like that. Nobody knows until they're in that situation. But there was something burning within you that chose you to be the person that you are, that you didn't give up. Because if you would have given up, Darryl, you'd be there right now. I mean, there's no doubt that if you hadn't have written the letters, and you wouldn't have continued to represent yourself, to educate yourself on who I should write to, how I should write to them, and stay into that mantra, you'd still be in prison. It's a fascinating thing, because you have, one of my favorite movies is Shawshank Redemption, because, Red says you better get busy living, get busy dying. That's really the only thing you can do in prison. You get busy living and try to work your way into something, or get busy dying, and you see those guys all over the place in prison. Somehow, some way, and I think this is the most interesting thing about your story, is that you knew you were wrongly accused of a murder that you did not convict, or you did not commit, but you didn't give up on it. You didn't give up on it. What do you think that was? I mean, what do you think that is? Because so many people, given that situation, would say, I give up. I give up.
Yeah, Brett, you're right. And there's a lot of guys who do give up. Like I said, I used my anger. I was so angry at the system and the judge, and that I said, that's when I told him I'm gonna fight this case and I prove that I'm innocent. So I had something to prove. I had something to prove, and anger. Now, don't get me wrong, I almost went in the wrong direction a few times with that anger,
Yeah.
and which could have cost me to be there or to get killed or whatever in that prison. I mean, I had to fight. I went in 147 pounds, man. I had to pump some iron. I had to, which dudes told me, said, man, you're gonna have to beef up in here, partner, because we got some big dudes in there, man, huge.
Yeah.
And so 147 pounds, a couple of guys come at you, 210 and, solid as a rock. What are you going to do? You can fight as best you can. So my anger, man, was that compelled me, like you said, to get into the law books and start reading the law and studying the law. And then you had a few other guys also was in the law library fighting their cases. I didn't know if they was innocent or not. And I didn't hardly talk about my innocence because see, people say, well, they always say
Everybody
innocent.
says they're innocent.
Yeah, yeah. That's until you get convicted. In prison where I was at, most guys, they don't want to hear about you saying you're innocent. They like, man, look,
Right.
if you're innocent, prove it. Ain't nobody innocent in here. And that's really the general attitude. A lot of guys say
Right.
it didn't happen the way they said it happened, or I got too much time for what they said I
Right.
did. Most guys
Yeah.
don't even talk about being innocent. And I didn't either, because you get
Right.
into a debate, which is going to end up being a fight, because I know I'm innocent, and you telling me I'm not, I'm going to be mad,
Yeah.
But I began to write these letters, man. I began to file these motions, these pleadings, these briefs. I kept getting denied. Could have been my middle name, Darryl denied Burton. But I didn't stop. I didn't stop filing these motions, man, all the way from state court all the way to Supreme Court. And then I wrote letters, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters, man, from the United States, Canada, Europe, Parliament, heads of states, presidents, governors, senators, Representative Oprah Winfrey, wrote to church. I wrote everybody you can think of, sports figures. If you came on TV and they popped your name up there, whoever you was, and I felt like, hey, man, I need to get my message and my story to this person. I found out where you was located, and I wrote to, your organization. And that's what I did. And I did it to Centurion.
I love that.
Yeah, I saw they was on TV in 60 Minutes doing in 1990, doing a segment on a woman that got out of prison who served 9 years she didn't commit. And I said, man, they helping innocent people get out of prison. Well, they got to help me too. And in 1990, I wrote them, and they wrote me back and said, yes, we free innocent people, but it'll be 10 years before we can get to your case. We so backlog. We take we get 1,000 requests every year. We take a couple of cases a year. And I said, well, look, I got 75 years without parole, so I'm going to write you for 10 years. In my mind, if you take my case in 10 years and get me out, then 65 years I won't have to do, 60, 65, whatever the case may be. And they took my case 10 years later in 2000 and got me out 8 years after that, 2008. So it was 18 years from the first letter that I wrote to that organization. And I kept seeing them get people out every year. That organization was getting somebody out, in another state, for, crimes they didn't commit. I'm like, man, when is it going to be my turn? When I got to be coming up at some point, but I had to do something I had to deal with that anger. I had to do something with that anger because I couldn't come out of that place as angry as I was while I was in that place. And everybody is angry. Everybody's angry.
Everybody's angry. Everybody's on edge. Yes. And Darryl, how did you adjust to that new life? That unfamiliar world. How did you, I know you went to the law library, you're right, but you had to also exist in there. What did you use any different type of strategies to make your days happen? Because you were in there for 24 years.
Yeah, and the thing to stay away from. There's certain things you got to avoid as best as you can. You can't totally avoid everything, but some things, there's just going to be some troublemaker for you if you get involved in the prison hustle, in the prison culture, and that's getting involved in, same gender relationships and trying to hustle and make money like that. And if you're getting involved in, in the drugs and you're getting involved in gambling, if you're getting involved in buying and borrowing things from other prisoners, then you're setting yourself up for some problems. My main focus was the law library. Now, I ain't gonna say I didn't get involved in some, what we call some hustle in prison, because I knew I had to earn a little living in prison also. But I definitely wasn't gonna get involved in dealing with, trafficking in human beings. See, people traffic in human beings in prison, and that's the money maker. but that's also the most deadliest game in prison. You know, that's the game that gets you stabbed and get you hurt and get you killed quicker than anything. There are no women in prison, you know, and so guys are into other men, and they fight to the death over some other man's body. Those are things, and no one had to tell me that, you know, as I just looked, you know, around the prison, you know, I'm real observant, you know, and then I wasn't interested in it anyway. You know, I went in heterosexual, so that was, you know, this is who I am. But I just knew, you know, that just observing most of the stabbings and the fights, and it was happening over some relationship situation. And the first day, in fact, the first day I got to this unit, they locked us behind these JC gate. Man, we got our bed in it and closing our arm. The first day they locked that gate, boom. We walked 10 feet and man, we heard some rumbling, and turned and looked around, and two guys were stabbing these two other guys. And it was about one guy trying to make another guy into his, you know, into his sex toy. And these guys, they was, you know, and they stabbing these guys. And that was the first day. The day that I got released, the same day I got released. That was the first day, in that prison. Like I said, it was the bloodiest 47 acres in America. But the day that I got released, Brent, which was August 29, 2008, they was rushing a man on this gurney to the prison hospital, blood just running off this gurney, this rolling bed. Guy had cut his throat from ear to ear, tried to decapitate him. That was the day that I left, when I got exonerated and proven innocent, and so much more in between. It was, man, it was hell on earth. That's the only way I can describe it. And I didn't go in a religious guy. I wasn't a believer in God. I mean, but I do remember, I can tell you this quick story, is that a guy, he was walking around to all the new guys that, you know, came to the prison, and he was out like, you know, he wasn't a trustee, he wasn't a guard, he was an inmate, but, you know, some convicts got ways to move, but this guy was different. He was strange. It's the only way I can describe him, right? And so he came to my cell. He went to a few other new guys. Said, oh, you one of the new guys here, right? So I'm thinking he's sizing me up. So I'm on my defense. I'm on guard. I'm uncomfortable with talking to strangers in this place anyway. I said, yeah, well, what's up, man? What's going on? What's up with you? He said, well, I just want to tell you, you know, in this prison, you're going to dance with the devil. That's what this guy was saying. And his eyes looked strange, you know. I said, look, man, I don't believe in the devil, hell, God. You know, I don't believe in none of that. You can get on away from me with that. And he stepped closer to the cell and he pointed at that number that was over my left breast pocket. He said, oh, you don't believe in hell. You don't believe in the devil, huh? He pointed at that number. He said, yeah, well, the devil believes in you. And he started laughing hysterically, man, and walked away. And other guys started, you know, kind of chiming in, laughing with him. And man, and I looked at that number, and you know, 153063, and I added the 1 and the 5 together. That was 6. The 3 and the 3 was 6, and the 0 to 6 was 6.
666.
666, man. And the guy said, well, wow, the devil believes in you. And I thought about that. You know, you're going to dance with the devil. And he was right, because there was some times when I danced with something that I knew was trying to take my life. Yeah.
Well, let's walk through because, I mean, once they did take your case, it took 8 years. Can you kind of walk us through that process of what happened, Darryl? Because I mean, I'm sure you were, I don't know what that would be, elated that this organization says, hey, we want you, we want your case, we believe in you. So that had to feel good. But then you know that there's this, they're not just going to let you out. You got to fight for everything you have. How did that all work?
Yeah, Brett, you're right. When the organization Centurion took my case, man, it was the happiest day of my life, because I was seeing them on the news. I mean, just frequently getting someone out. And when they came and took my case, they told me, said, Darryl, when we take your case and commit to your case, we're going to stay with your case till you're free. And they said that. They said, the only way we don't is if, you know, you're on death row or you get executed or you die in prison, God forbid you get killed. They said, but we're going to stay with your case until we get you out. But it's going to take some time. That's what they told me. They set me up, said, look, this is not going to happen overnight. The average time it takes to get a person out is, you know, 5-7 years or more. But we're going to fight till we get you out. We got to go back to look at all the evidence in the case, look at all the records, all the files, and we got to go through it. I'm talking, they said, we're going to go through it line by line. And because what we've seen so far give us clear indications that you're an innocent man. And so that's
Yeah.
what we're seeing so far. But we got to go back and reinvestigate. So it's going to take time. And they said, what we want you to do is stay out of trouble and give us your word. You won't do anything in this prison to keep us from getting you out. You know, that is get into a fight or get into a knife fight or hurt somebody or get hurt. And when you come out, you're just going to live your life, you know, and be a good reflection, you know, for yourself. I said, you got my word. You know, I said, but it's hard to promise you in prison. I got to survive in here, you know, and I got to do whatever it takes, you know, to save my life. And I ain't going to let nobody, you know, if I can, I ain't going to let nobody hurt me, you know. So, and that's what I told him. I said, I'm going to do my best, you know, but I'm in prison. It's different than what you are on the streets.
How many turn downs did you get, Darryl, through this process?
As far as writing people and asking for help.
No, once they took your case, I know that I think it went.
Oh man, yeah, it was
all the way through, and I think maybe the Supreme Court.
Yes, went always to the Supreme Court. Yeah, we got turned down. I mean, just one after another. When they took my case and started filing motions with the court, the federal court, state court, local courts, Supreme Court, and it eventually came back to a state court. And after 8th Circuit Court of Appeals said, you know, and I'm gonna quote them a little bit verbatim, they said, the judge, 3-judge panel said, my case troubled them. They said the facts in this case that's been unearthed, you know, it suggests that Missouri convicted an innocent man with no small degree of reluctance. We denied Burton's risk, even though the facts suggest this man is innocent. And we hope through the state of Missouri, through the judicial of the executive branch, take a second look at this case. That's what they said. Man, that crushed me. I mean, this was 2000.
I can't imagine. I read that, Darryl, and couldn't believe. I mean, this judge went a whole paragraph of basically saying that you were wrongly convicted.
Yeah. And I mean, lawyers from around the country said they had never read an opinion like that. Even to this day, you know, a guy wrote a book and put my case, you know, in his book, and he's talked about that. They said, man, this is one of the craziest, you know, opinions they've ever written, they've ever read. And I couldn't believe it. And then my lawyers, they seemed like they was excited, you know, to get an opinion like that. I mean, they wasn't slapping high fives necessarily, not in front of me, but man, and I heard afterward that they cried like a baby because they didn't understand, you know, why those judges could write something like that and not grant me relief.
So then an opening happens, right, with the Missouri Supreme Court, that somebody was released, and this organization saw an opening that this could work for you. Is that correct?
Well, there was a Supreme Court decision, Sloop versus D-Lo, which he was on death row, and that case got overturned. And the lawyer who argued that case in the Supreme Court is Sean O'Brien, which is a member of a Miracle of Innocence on our board. But that case became the gateway to let, you know, state prisoners present new evidence in a constitutional violation to present that back to a state court judge and or a federal judge. That was the gateway, that got me back in front of a state judge, a judge who, by the way, was the one who put Sloop on death row, the same judge.
This was, and then you went back to the state judge. Was that Callahan at the time?
That was Callahan. Judge Callahan. And he was the one who had prosecuted the Sloop case and put Sloop on death row. And the case got reversed at the Supreme Court. And and it was the same judge I was going in front of. And the lawyers was telling me, Darryl, we just don't know. You know, this is what you call a long shot of all long shots. And this is your last opportunity in any court to get relief because, man, we don't know where else we're going to go if this judge don't grant you your freedom. And I said, let me pray for y'all right now. I had become a Christian and believer by then. And I said, man, let me pray for y'all in this courtroom right now because it's going to be bigger than you all. This is going to be God's doing. That's what I believe. And and Judge Callahan did it. He granted me relief. Praise God.
And I mean, I just can't imagine, Darryl, after all that time, what you must have been thinking when that happened.
Well, man, I can tell you what I was thinking. And it's one thing, and Jim McCuskey says it best. I knew the truth, and the truth was going to forever be with me, whether they let me go or not. I knew the truth. But it's something else that I was seeking that I couldn't get in that world of chaos, and I had to figure out how to get it, and that was peace. And I got it from one verse in the Bible, and that's when Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke's Gospel 23:34. That one verse began to transform my heart because I'm saying this guy was innocent. It's at least 8 or
Yeah.
9 times when they said he was innocent, they executed him, and he was forgiving these people on the cross at the point of
Yeah.
death. And I said, if this guy can forgive at the point of death, then I'm in the land of living. So at least I can begin to try. So, but that was the beginning of, because I had to deal with that rage and that hate. But then that was
Yeah.
the beginning, and having me and asking me or challenging me to pray for people I hated, even my enemies. So that's when things began to start to turn for me internally, because that's what I was
Internally.
seeking. I was seeking internal peace. So whether they let me go or not, 10 years before I got out, I had found this peace that I had been seeking. I was free inside me and gave all my stuff away. Guys that felt, man, this guy, he got on this God, Jesus kick. He's losing it. I gave all my previous stuff away twice. So those guys, of course, they took it. I said, man, look, this
Sure they did.
yeah, they took it.
So Darryl, when that happens, because I don't think people even know how that happens. When you get exonerated by the court, what happens that day? Where do you go? What happens?
Well, when I didn't know I was getting out that day, I had went
Yeah.
on when you have your regular routine detail when they do they count every 2 hours, and so the count that was about 6 o'clock for the 7 o'clock detail. They open the gates and say, okay, you guys, whoever going to work, go to work. Your work call. If you're going to school, whatever you're doing. So I went to my regular 7:30, went to my assigned job. And this caseworker came to me with a sheet of paper, had one sheet of paper, and he had this real intense look on his face. And man, and when that look is on a caseworker's face and he got a piece of paper, I'm going to the hole. It's not, this is not a good scenario. But this time it was different. And he said, Darryl, I need to talk to you right away. And he was frowning all up. And I'm like, okay, man, I'm saying to myself, here we go again. Because I've been to the whole, I've been, through the whole gamut. And he said, well, look, this lady pulled me in the business office this morning. Did you know Darryl Burton was going home and she was firm with me and I need some information right now? I said, what? Wait a minute, man. And I was, it was surreal. And I wasn't believing him because I had been, like you say, seesaw. One day it would seem like the court's going to rule in my favor and then the bottom fall out. But then a few minutes later, here come the warden of the prison. He came. So both of these guys are saying this to me and I'm still not believing it. So the warden said, look, just go back to your housing unit and pack your stuff. And it was on a Friday. He said, look, and I just say this here, don't call your mom or anybody yet, because I need to get an email. If they're not going to retry you, and if they're going to, say they dropping this case, then I'm going to release you today. You're going to be a free man today. If they're going to retry you, they can take you back to St. Louis. And I said, oh, man, okay. I said, I believe it when I see it. He said, well, just go back. I said, I need to at least call my lawyers. He said, well, call your lawyers. And that's what I did. I went back to the housing unit and I was calling the lawyers. The third call, because lawyers, it's about 8:30 now. They don't get to their office till like 10, some of them. Yeah. And he came in, here come the warden again. And he had this huge smile on his face with his hand extended, said, congratulations, Darryl, you've been exonerated. You're an innocent man. We got to get you out of this prison ASAP. And I said this here, I said, well, man, let me just shower and say goodbye to the guys. Now some folks said, man, you should have been hurry up, man. I wanted to shower. I said, I'm going to take me a shower. I went to work. I didn't do a whole lot of work, but that was my routine. And it was going to be the last time, that I showered in that place. And I told my roommate, my bunkie, cellmate, I said, hey, man, pack my stuff. I'm out of here. I'm a free man today. I'm innocent. And of course, the 5 minutes, the whole housing unit of 275 men knew. In 5 minutes, within an hour, the whole prison knew. Everybody in the whole camp knew I was exonerated and found innocent. Yeah.
Wow, Darryl. Unbelievable. So you walk out of there and it's been 24 years. How do you leave?
It was hard to process. It was surreal. And I had two guards, they both was, one had the cart. He was pushing the cart with my belongings on it. And they both would just pepper me with a lot of questions, Darryl, what you going to do as soon as you get out? Are you going to see your mom? Are you going to eat something? Pepper me with all kind of questions. I said, man, fellas, I don't know. I haven't been out there in almost quarter of a century. I don't know what I'm going to do, and I really didn't. And so, and I'm listening at them, but I had asked myself those questions too. I asked myself where I'm going to live, how long it's going to take me to get a job. I'm asking myself all these old questions. What kind of work can I do, And then they asked me, coach, man, do you have a girlfriend? And I said, no, I don't have a girlfriend, man. I've been, want a woman to put her life on hold. I don't know when I was getting out. But and then they got me in what's called this behind the control center area, put me behind this huge window pane. It went from floor to ceiling, huge, looked like it was 10 feet tall. And guys who they couldn't come where I was, and I couldn't go back to where they was. But they would come up, and they would maybe be, I don't know, a few yards from me, 20, 30 yards, and they would just, was telling me goodbye. See you, Darryl, and pounding their chest and throwing up peace signs, and
that was your world.
Yeah, I grew up with those guys, man. I grew up with them. Yeah, for 25 years. So that's who I knew. That's I knew these guys. We grew up when we was kids. Went in there. As kids, man. So yeah, that was my world. That's what I knew. Wasn't my world. It was their world, but I had to survive and live in it. Yeah.
And you did. You adapted and survived and got out.
Yeah.
And got exonerated. It's just an incredible story. So, Darryl, so you get out. And I know there's 1,000 things spinning around in your mind because reentry is one of the tougher things. And, I think every year that goes by when you're in prison, I think reentry becomes that much more difficult. How did you reenter society?
Well, I had some support. I didn't have any support that came from the state. The state didn't give me anything, didn't compensate me. I don't have any.
Because it has to be DNA, right? Is that what you told me?
Missouri DNA. Yeah, they compensate if it's DNA.
Everything else you don't get compensated for.
Not in Missouri.
24 years, you don't have any DNA.
Not in Missouri. Missouri don't do anything for you. No 401k, no Social Security,
nothing like that.
Retirement pension.
Thank you for the 24.
Yeah, not even a job offer. They don't even give me a job offer. Brent, nothing. And so, trying to reintegrate back into society. Like I said, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I found a church home. Some church folks began to help me, and other folks. I was on television a lot, and I started going around speaking. That's how I made a living. I was speaking because I couldn't get a job for 2 years. No one would hire me. I had no work skills. I finally got an interview, and I said, man, if I could just get an interview with somebody, and I can tell them my story, because then I had filling out applications on a computer online. I had never done that before. So everything, the whole world was different. Cell phones, technology. It was a challenge for me, and reintegrating back into society was hard. It's not easy for anyone who's been gone for any length of time. I don't understand my family. They don't understand me. Some of them look at me just like I've been on a long vacation. I'm back. Everything's normal. No. I mean, I'm dealing with some trauma, and I got PTSD. Certain, I couldn't go around crowds. That made me nervous. Certain things were triggers for me. It was a lot of things that I was trying to adjust to, I mean, people cutting in front of you in line out here, I'm like, you couldn't do that in prison.
No.
You couldn't do that in prison. You couldn't cut in front of somebody in prison without, it was going to be a confrontation. But out here, it's just like, oh, who are you? And I'm like, man, this world here.
Different.
It's different, yeah. People talking crazy to you out here. It's a level of respect in prison that you're going to get, whether you earned it, deserve it or not. Because guys, they don't want to underestimate you, and they know if and now some guys do disrespect anybody, but by and large, most of the folks, in there gonna, try to be. It's
all about respect. Yeah,
they're gonna try to be at peace with you. But out here, so a lot of triggers, man, a lot of triggers and a lot of things that even now I've been out for over a decade now. I still have struggles out here, and even to this day, I've been out 14 years. But,
what do you think's your biggest struggle after being out for a decade? What's the thing that hits you?
Control. It just, seemed like, everything is controlled and it's controlling me. It's like I got to make these different, I got to make these, what I would call other folks, I'm on other folks' agenda all the time. Just like in prison, you're on their agenda. So I'm on other folks' agenda all the time, okay, Darryl, get over here, do this. Darryl, be here, be here. Darryl, be there, and it's like, that's what it was in prison, it's just, be here, get over there, go over there, out of bounds, I mean, like I said, man, it's like, a lot of things, and a lot of things that I just don't understand technology wise. It's a struggle. I didn't, they give a flip phone in my hand. I don't understand technology. This stuff is, I'm still struggling with it. Just like with this computer stuff, getting online and Zoom. I'm a whole lot better now since COVID. I had to learn it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but this is when I
Well, the
went to
whole world
school.
changed. I mean, there was no internet. There was,
Exactly.
when you got out in 2008, the iPhone had just been born. Facebook, I think, was born in 2004. All those things that happened
That's right.
happened while you were behind the walls. And,
That's right.
I always say, getting out of prison is like trying to jump into a moving car.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that maybe is the most misunderstood, because there's no way, Darryl, that I can identify with 24 years. I was sentenced to 5 years, but one of the things I can identify with is that you want to plug back into the world, and all these things are going on in your head. Are you happy and elated and excited and like a 5-year-old going down the stairs when Santa Claus is there on Christmas Day? Absolutely. But you also have these other things going around, like, where am I going to get a job? How am I going to plug back into the family? What have they been doing since I've been gone? Can I get back in? Am I going to be a burden? Am I, all these different things that are just flying around, and you have to try to plug into those things immediately. It's not like, they give you, okay, we're going to let you out, and then for the next, year, we're going to slow walk you into this program that we have for you to get out of prison. No, they just plug you in and say, let's go. So I think it's just incredible what you've been able to do as you were able to get through all of that, get back into society. Can you tell us a little bit now about what you're doing as Darryl Burton? Because I know you and I talked about, you've got a book coming out. I know that you went through, well, just tell me what all you've been doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Brent. Since I've been home, I was able to, assimilate back into society as best as I can. I, started a family, got married, and went back to school. Went to school for seminary school, St. Paul School of Theology, and earned a degree in divinity, a master's degree in divinity, which was hard because of technology. I could read the books and do the curriculum study, but the technology, I almost quit 3 times because of the technology. Then ended up in a church called Resurrection, Church of the Resurrection, United Methodist Church of the Resurrection, which is the largest Methodist church in the United States. And I'm one of the associate pastors there. And then me and another exoneree, Lamont McIntyre, we started this organization, a nonprofit called Miracle of Innocence. And so what we do is help other innocent people get out of prison. But something you just said, Brent, is that, getting out of prison, that's one step. But what do you do, and how do you reintegrate, assimilate back into society? Well, our program helps people when they get out. We help them get out and help them once they come home. We help them with getting identification, transportation, communication, job placement, counseling services, whatever that need is. We help them with that because, it's like a culture shock. You could have dropped me in the middle of Japan and said, "Now figure it out," on your own. And so we walk with them as mentors, and help them because, man, I mean, they got a lot of resources for people who committed the crime when they come home. And I wouldn't ask for some help. And they told me, "We can't help you, Darryl. We help the guilty. Yeah, you're innocent. It's like somebody walking off the streets and asking for a resource from us. We'll lose our funding. You got to start an innocent program for you guys. We can't help you." That's what they told me. I said, "Well, man, I did 25 years. They said, "Yeah, we know that, but we're sorry." Now they help innocent people too. So they want the funding for that as well. But when I got out, they wouldn't help me. So, and that's what I said, we're going to start a program to help them get out and help them once they come home. And that's what we do.
I love that. And you're dubbed as the Miracle Man on the internet. But your projects, so just so people know how to donate, because I think what you're doing is so cool, Darryl. It's called the Miracle of Innocence, right?
Miracleofinnocence.org. Yes.
Yeah. So anybody who wants to donate to that, you can actually go to Darryl's. You can actually type in Darryl Burton and go to his homepage on his website, and it's got a place there that you can actually, it says donate to free the innocent. So I just think it's so cool what you've been able to do, because so much about what this show is about is, being able to get through your nightmare, but then to be able to use it. And, Darryl, you've lived that. You have lived that. You didn't give up, and you could have. you didn't give up when you got out because the technology and everything. You said you probably felt like quitting 3 times, but you got through that. Now you're one of the biggest Methodist church. I can't imagine how good of a minister you are, a preacher. I mean, for somebody to share, the vulnerabilities of what you've gone through and to have the forgiveness in your heart to will yourself to understand what that means. Man, it's just really powerful stuff. And Darryl, I always ask people this on this show, going through the journey that you've gone through, because this isn't something that you signed up for. You didn't know this was going to happen to you in your life, but you lived it, and you are the man you are now because of it. What do you think's your biggest takeaway from all these things that you've went through?
Well, the biggest takeaway, I don't know if it's a single biggest takeaway. What I will say, and maybe it is that I have a conscious contact with God now, a higher power. I went in as an unbeliever, and nothing was going to change that had I not gone into that prison, which was hell on earth. I had swore off. I grew up in the Baptist faith tradition, and I had literally swore off any religious community that was organized, was not going to accept it. And I got in that place and I said, man, all this evil and all this hell, it's got to be an opposite to this, because boy, this is nothing.
It's bad.
Yes, this is nothing like, and I don't wish this on anyone, my worst enemy. And so that was probably the thing that gave me peace. The thing that I would say is probably
you found peace.
Yeah, that's at the top, and even right now, being back into society, and you said, the journey. Well, the journey is not over. I'm still on the journey.
You're on the journey, man.
And the second biggest thing, or next to the biggest thing, is that I've learned how to deal with adversity and power through it with perseverance. That's what that taught me. It taught me that, no matter how tough things can get, and it's going to be tough for a lot of us in life, if not all of us in life, just power through it. And I just say it was something quickly that a guy came into prison. He was an outside guest. You get outside guests come in and talk to prison. Something he said that was key, that kind of held me together in the times I was really in low places. And he was talking to a group of prisoners. He said, look, you guys, I know this is hell on earth. You guys, this is depressing. Being in prison is no fun at all. He said, but I want to challenge you guys to don't give up and don't quit 5 minutes before your miracle happened. I remember that guy said that, and I held it into my heart and my head, because I couldn't look out 5 years. That was too far, too long, or 5 days. But I could do 5 minutes at a time. So a lot of that time, I broke it down in 5-minute increments, 5-minute increments.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Because everything in prison, you go up 5 years, that's way too much. That's overwhelming. But can you win the day? Can you win the day and get through it?
That's right.
Darryl, I am so honored that you were able to make time to do this. I've been excited I've told my family, I had my family over the weekend. I said, I can't wait to interview Darryl. And man, your story, it's inspiring. And, people build up prisons in their own mind, and they can knock them down if they can do what you did. You just keep stepping through that, keep knocking it down, and like you said, you can get through it. Nothing is as bad as your mind makes it out to be. And you found a way. You just found a way, and you kept finding a way. And now, and like you, and if anybody, again, I want to make sure that everybody's it's Darryl Burton, type it in. You can go to his website. It's got all kinds of stuff on there, and be able to donate to the Miracle of Innocence. You've been able to listen to the Miracle Man here today. And Darryl, you do have a book coming out, right?
Yes, I do. Innocent, a Second Look. It's coming. That's the name of it.
I like it. So look for that. Look
Innocent,
for that, folks.
Second Look. Yes.
Innocent Second Look. And if anybody else is looking
innocent, colon, a second look.
Got it. Innocent, colon, a second look.
Right.
Love it, Darryl. If anybody else is looking for a book out there, Darryl's is coming out. I've got one, Nightmare Success, Loyalty, Betrayal, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, Finally Breaking Free. For those out there, love the feedback, love the likes on social media, comments. Please go to Apple and leave a review. That helps out the show for how they promote it. If you want to know, leave me a message, BrentCassidy.com, all kinds of stuff there. As I used to say when I was typing my emails back when I was in prison, stay strong. I'll do the same. Nightmare Success in and out. Darryl Burton, thank you so much, man.
Hey, Brett, thank you, man. It's awesome. Great
Appreciate
spending
it.
time with you.